Welcome to the Great I.O. Get-Together. On tonight's show, quips and queries about the world of work as I.O. psychology comes alive. Now please welcome our hosts, Richard and Tara. Thank you so much, Perry. Welcome everyone to Great I.O. Get-Together number 20. Put me in, Coach, with Shonna Waters. It's my co-host, Tara. Thank you so much for joining us today. Remember, subscribe, turn on your notification bell, join the show's Discord, join our email list. Details about all of that are available on our website, thegig.online. All of our regular shows, and this one is no exception, have two halves. In the first half, we have a little fun. The second half, we get a little more serious, all with our guest of the day. So today on the show, we have Shonna Waters, Vice President of Strategic Alliances and Partnerships at BetterUp, SIOP Fellow, author of The Coaching Shift, which offers practical advice on how to adopt a coaching mindset, as well as author of The Practical Guide to HR Analytics. Both available wherever fine books are sold. So welcome to the show, Shonna.
Thanks, Richard. I'm happy to be here.
Today's game is Would You Rather? So in this game, we're going to be presenting our guests with two equally enticing, confusing, or maybe just implausible scenarios. And we'll ask which she would rather and why. Let's have some fun, interesting conversations about our answers. That sound all right?
That sounds all right. We'll see. I might regret saying that, but no, it'll be good.
You'll be fine.
Well, we can go ahead and get started. We're gonna start very serious, of course. So your first question: would you rather coach a room full of second graders or a room full of MBAs?
That's hard. I would probably go for the second graders.
Oh,
yeah, and I say that because. So I also am a mom, and I have three children, and I've taught MBA classes. So I feel like I'm coming from a place of expertise on this. And my observation has been that we spend most of kids' childhood trying to socialize them and like sort of create barriers to their thinking and things like that. And then we get to, the time when they're adults, and we spend all of our time trying to open up their thinking and unsocialize them. And so since a lot of coaching is about possibilities and seeing things in different ways and things like that, I think the second graders are actually probably easier.
Oh, well, so I imagine a number of our viewers aren't 100% sure what coaching means in this context or in any context. So wait, what do you actually do? What would you do with second graders? Like, what
would I do? Well, it's a great question because I talk a lot about this, how, I use my coaching skills all the time, and using them with my children is one of the primary opportunities to do that. So a lot of it is around helping them see additional ways of viewing things, giving, kind of bounded choices. I'm trying to think of what a good recent example might be. And also, by the way, if you ever get into reading, anything on hostage negotiation, lots of similarities, lots of overlap between that and coaching. And I do think parenting toddlers is very similar to hostage negotiation. So
I'm not sure who the hostage is.
Me, I'm the hostage. Okay. I work with a small dictator all the time. But yeah, so I think, a lot of times they're upset about something, and it's like trying to get them to pause, take a deep breath, give choices, like how else can we view the situation? Things like that. There's often cases where, my toddler is angry because she wants to do something herself, right? And so, if I make the mistake of doing something for her, and it's like, kind of flips the gasket. It's like, how do you get them to come back down? So lots of coaching all the time.
I see. Nice. Well, let's second question. We'll go a little less serious, I guess. Would you rather never go to the SIOP annual conference again, or go every month for the rest of your life?
There would be a lot of goodness to be gained by going every month, but I'm not sure that I have that much energy at
No.
this stage in my life. I feel like those bars, those hotel bars after SIOP, I mean, you can't walk by without getting sucked in.
That was a very diplomatic answer.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, look, SIOP is great for me, especially at this stage where, I don't get a lot of opportunities to go like that level of depth into some of the topics. So I could probably stand to, 1 year go every month. Every year for the rest of my life. Like I would
Too much.
Yeah. I would probably opt for never going again.
It's very reasonable.
All right, next. Ooh, now it is a little more serious. Would you rather people say that your book, The Coaching Shift, is too difficult or too obvious?
Too obvious.
Oh, why? Tell me more.
Well, a couple of things. Like one is, I think in general, psychology has the benefit of seeming like common sense, and yet like simple doesn't mean easy. So I think a lot of people struggle with the basics of like understanding, implementing psychology on a day-to-day basis. So if, I wouldn't take it as an insult if they said it was too easy, but too difficult, given that the intent of the book is to make it very accessible and make it so that anyone, regardless of their role, stage of life, anything like that, can kind of grasp the concepts and start to weave them into their day-to-day life, like then that would be a pretty big failure.
Oh. Let's get next. Would you rather complete grad school again or repeat the first 5 years of your post-grad school career?
I would love to complete grad school again.
Oh, that's very strong.
It is. But I mean, like if I could find a sucker to pay me for it, I would be a career student. I love being in school, which is ironic because I worked all through grad school and, like was anxious to get through it. And now in hindsight, it's like, I do it all the time. But I would go to a different program. No love lost for, the University of Minnesota. But I think just to like get different experiences, I hear, every program has a different culture. And I also might try a different domain. So you never know.
Oh, like what?
Well, I'm really interested in actually like anti-disciplinary approaches.
Anti-disciplinary.
Anti-disciplinary or transdisciplinary, depending on, your lens on the world. But just like the idea that, when you start problem first, if you're kind of agnostic to what the discipline or set of tools or approaches are, you can come up with more novel and integrated solutions. So MIT does a lot of that as an example, but I think things like that could be really fun.
Oh, neat. So you want to go to MIT now? That's what
I mean, maybe.
That's what I'm hearing.
I wouldn't rule it out. I would, if I could figure out a way to talk them into like letting me into the media lab, even just like as a fly on the wall for, a year or something. I would definitely do that.
Maybe you're destined to create your own program like that. Who needs MIT? Make your own.
You never know. I'm not going to say that it'll never happen because I've said that about a number of things that have then become my destiny. So.
All right. Our last question, our last would you rather, is it's a pretty deep one. Would you rather coach or be coached by ChatGPT?
Would I rather coach ChatGPT or be coached by ChatGPT? I would rather be coached by ChatGPT.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, I've had the opportunity to do that, and it was fun.
What were you coached on? What was?
Whatever I want to be coached on. No, I mean, it's actually, we do a lot of obviously experimentation and things like that. And yeah, I mean, I've done all sorts of things. Like we had a little tool where I would, say like, hey, you had a lot of meetings today. How are you feeling? And, have opportunities to engage with it. And it's great.
Do you think
Do you worry at all that?
Go ahead.
Do you worry at all that AI is a threat to what you do as a coach?
I don't personally, but I think fundamentally, I believe, it's a tool. And we've had lots of other tools that seem super disruptive. And I mean, it does change things. It's not that it won't, but I think it's more of like a marriage of how these things will work together. And ultimately, a lot of the things that AI is good at are things that, frankly, I wouldn't mind outsourcing anyway. So I think I see it as just ways to make what the humans are doing more effective, more efficient, more specialized, and more accessible.
I totally agree.
Well, excellent. Those are all my would you rather questions. So,
oh man, I thought you were like totally going to give me something really controversial.
Wait, what should we have asked you?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know. I was like, I can't remember. Well, I think one of the previous episodes I was watching, there was like IO history questions or something. And I was like, they're going to pull something out and make.
Well, we could say, would you rather hang out with me or hang out with Richard? How about that?
Ooh, I mean, I had a good, what was it, 3 years, Richard? We had a good 3 years.
True.
So,
we did.
I do like novelty.
Yeah. Sorry, Richard.
That's fair. I'll take it. Well, excellent. You've passed. You've won. The game is won. So
yes,
congratulations.
I'm number one.
We will take a short break, 5 minutes, and we'll come back with more Shonna Waters. So stay tuned. And we are back. Welcome. Rejoining us today is Dr. Shonna Waters. Going to talk a little bit about her adventures on career and writing and all sorts of stuff. I'm going to start by asking you about your career path. You have a doctorate in IO. You've moved into a position, kind of an area of focus that I think a lot of IOs would find really interesting. The actual title, Vice President of Strategic Alliances and Partnerships, which is very impressive sounding. And two, you are an executive coach. So could you tell us maybe a bit about your journey, I guess, from your degree to these kind of two, I don't know if they're separate roles really, but these two sort of identities, I guess, that you have now?
Yeah, so many identities. Yeah, I'll do a little bit of walking down memory lane and, try not to drag on with it, and feel free to like stop me or ask questions or anything like that. But yeah, so very, what I always characterize as traditional pedigree in terms of IO, right? I actually started working at Humro even prior to going to grad school at the University of Minnesota for my PhD. So very eye side of things, loved measurement, individual differences, high stakes testing, all of that. And, really went to Minnesota to work with Paul Sackett because I was interested in fairness and bias and how nature and nurture show up and all of those things. Got great training there, went back into consulting, external consulting for a long time. Back at Humro, I also worked at PDRI for about 3 years at PDRI, 12 years at Humro, which is kind of crazy to think about. But during that time, I worked on all sorts of problems and had a lot of opportunity to do interdisciplinary stuff and loved the work. Mostly was doing I stuff, dabbled in O, and like it started piquing my curiosity then. But when I left Humro and went into the government, I worked for a mid-sized government agency, originally in the selection group. And it was as an internal psychologist that I really learned that even your I project is an O project, because at the end of the day, there's so much change management and the need to do systems, processes, implementation, affiliated with even a new testing system. And so I got really interested in that, and like, okay, we build all these wonderful tools, but if we can't get people to use them or use them properly, we're kind of wasting our time. So I switched into the organizational effectiveness group and started working on variety of more like org development, org effectiveness projects, and realized that so often, the leader is part of the challenge. And for myself, despite like having studied leadership and leadership theories and all of that a lot, I didn't have a very strong toolkit to actually intervene with a leader and help them grow and change and develop self-awareness and all of that. So confluence of events, Dave Dorsey, who is my mentor and supervisor at the time, decided or offered for me to go to Georgetown University's coaching program. Dave is a coach, Wayne Bachman, who was also there, was a coach. So a lot of support for that. And that was like a super transformative experience for me. I had always been like, a little bit skeptical, and went in, and one of the first things that struck me was how familiar it all was. Like, I know all these theories, and hey, like this looks a lot like cognitive reframing, and hey, there's like goal setting and motivation and all of these things that are embedded into this thing. And it actually was this great experience because it took all the years of my academic learning up until then and wrapped it into this really integrated, very practical bow that I could use, not just like in the aggregate or in theory, but with individuals to help make change. So that was really an inflection point in my career. I had a pit stop at the Society of Human Resource Management, SHRM, where I led their research department. I was the VP of research there. But in the end, I had been stuck in this question of, wow, like coaching so powerful, had a huge impact on me. I'm having a huge impact on those I work with, but like, I'm not a patient person, and I love scale and multi-level issues. And so like, how do we scale this thing? How do we actually have it as like a vehicle for change with teams, organizations, society even? And as I was asking in the coaching community about that, I learned about BetterUp. So flash forward, got really curious about the intersection of technology and things like coaching and psychology more broadly. I was actually on SIOP's website, posting positions for my team at SHRM as I was hiring, and stumbled across this company, BetterUp, that I knew of, who was looking for IO psychologists, and was like, got to see what that's about. And that's really what started the path down, all the other windy roads that I've taken, was just curiosity, having some conversations, and then, following sort of what felt like something that could be really exciting. So basically my first 2.5, 3 years at BetterUp were in more traditional IO stuff, a lot of consulting, research, assessment development, marketing support, things like that. I did a short stint. We do tours of duty at BetterUp. So I did a quarter in product marketing, which was really interesting. And then from there, we were rebuilding our ecosystem, strategic alliances and partnerships. And they asked me to come over as like a, startup-y person, a 0 to 1 type person. And didn't know a ton about ecosystems at the time, but ended up finding it's actually a really great place for IOs because it requires a lot of systems thinking, a lot of thinking about the outcome and working backwards. And there's a lot of data involved. A lot of what I do is technology alliances and thinking about, data integrations and, what value we can bring to customers by doing that. So it's been really fun.
And
I love that story because it's just about, being open-minded and curious and not having necessarily a 10-year plan. I think a lot of young people stress out about that. And it means that they miss out on those really amazing, happy accidents. So thank you. I love that story.
Yeah. And it's like, I actually feel really constrained when somebody asks me like about my career goals. So I'm like, man, I never would have predicted any of this. Like if you'd asked me, I mean, telling Paul Sackett, my advisor, that I'm in coaching, and he's like, "What happened?" Right? I can remember John Miros, who was in my cohort at Minnesota, like doing his dissertation on coaching, and I was like, "What are you doing? There's no data there. It's like 1-to-1. Like, how are you going to actually study anything?" So yeah, I think there's definitely something to that, Tara. It's like if you actually take the pressure off of yourself and don't think about things as like a linear path, you can end up somewhere better than you would have imagined.
So one place that you've ended up is that not a lot of people get to end up is as an author, and not of one but of two books. You've got a few years ago, 2018 was the guide to HR analytics, and then now Coaching Shift, which I think came out in November.
Mm-hmm.
Where did those come from? Who are they for? And maybe in the serendipity path too. Like, how did you find yourself writing books?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I never planned to write a book. It
Mm.
wasn't really a thing on my bucket list. Yeah, the first one came out of, again, I mentioned I was the VP of research at SHRM, and I did a lot of speaking engagements, often on analytics, just based on my background. And frequently in the audience, folks would come up to me and they would say, "Gosh, I know this analytics stuff is really important, but I got to be honest, like, this is not my strength. I don't know how to start. I don't know what to do with it. Like, I'm kind of intimidated by it." And so much of it was like, it's really not that scary. And actually, you're probably doing stuff that, and leveraging skills that really overlap with what's needed here. So I saw a big need and audience for it. And our publishing area was looking for a book on that topic and asked if I would do it. And I saw it as an opportunity to collaborate with some really talented, more junior colleagues too. So I have three co-authors, Lindsay, Rachel, and Valerie. Valerie, who you know well, I think, Richard. And yeah, like that was really just about like, how do we make it not scary? And that was important to me because in my time at NSA, so much of the work I was doing was in analytics or analytics adjacent, things like measurement. And it was really hard to get, sort of the data fluency required from my peers in HR to be able to move things forward and get like faster adoption and acceptance, and saw that as like an important thing for us to like advance people practices and organizations that we needed to get people more comfortable with analytics.
That's great. That seems do you have the same sort of practical guidance approach in the Coaching Shift then? I'm just noticing a theme of you saw a problem and then you wanted to make some resources or pursue it. Is that what happened there too?
Yeah, exactly. The Coaching Shift came out of, so it's been right after I finished my own coach training, I was asked to teach or to create a class on coaching skills for HR professionals at Georgetown. And at the time, there wasn't a lot of, or there weren't really textbooks or things like that for like coaching for a non-coach audience. So I really pieced things together and all of that with the thought that like, man, this would be so much easier for me and for my students if we just had the book. But I prefer to collaborate with others. So it wasn't until a couple of years later where Brody Reardon asked her to start co-teaching with me, and she's a multi-time author too, and was interested in taking on the challenge. And so we wrote the book that we wished we had for our class. But what was interesting was she and I also both like consult and work with a lot of organizations. When they would learn that we taught this class, they would ask for the syllabus and the materials and, hey, would you come and do a talk and things like that. So we saw like a much bigger audience as I think the word has gotten out about coaching, and there's a lot of interest in like building coaching skills among managers and others in organizations.
Well, yeah, coaching is certainly a really interesting area. It's funny you mentioned the Minnesota story because I don't think I even heard of coaching except through John Muros, who you mentioned. Do you think that are we on the rise? Is this something that IO Psych is started to take up, or are we still at a very kind of like, is it still very much that practice versus academic shift where the coaching community is kind of taking on its own, or like how do you view the growth of both the discipline, I guess it's a discipline, and practice? Like where are we going?
Yeah, it's really interesting. I think it is definitely growing, and I think it's getting more credibility in the IO community and more interest for a lot of reasons. Evan Steinar has probably done some analyses or something on this, but I have, from my own perception, noticed an increase in like sessions at SIOP about coaching, and more coaches who have IO backgrounds as well. I think that coaching science has certainly evolved a lot since I became a coach, even. And one of the things that I attribute that to is technology. Like, I'll give you an example. Earlier this week, I was reviewing a recent meta-analysis by like Eric DeHaan and a co-author on coaching effectiveness. And there's more than a handful now of meta-analyses on coaching. But I was looking and I'm like, okay, this is great. There's like K's like 48 studies or something like that, and like over 2,500 people. It's like randomized controlled trial and all of that. Great. Well, by virtue of working at BetterUp and having IOs there from the beginning, we've had, validated assessments in place from the very beginning that are used with all of our coachees. And we've been doing this for, 10 years now. And so we've delivered over 2.5 million coaching sessions with a global network of over 3,000 coaches. And they come from different training backgrounds, different demographics, different age groups. The members that they're coaching are all over the world, different levels in the organization, everyone from individual contributor to C-suite. We can look at different topics that they're discussing and what resources they're getting in between. And so the amount of data that we have, and we're just one coaching platform, there's many, many others, like just the amount of data out there and the sophistication that, we can apply to looking at these questions, understanding really how it works, under what conditions, with whom, has just grown exponentially due to technology.
I almost hear you saying that the academic literature is almost a curiosity. Like, it's not going to be able to make the same kinds of sophisticated claims that you can with your data. Is that a problem?
Well, I see them as like very like complementary and go hand in hand. And at BetterUp, like we our founders, while they're not trained scientists or psychologists themselves, they more or less are, and they've always had like a big passion for and value around science and the academic process and peer-reviewed publications and things like that. So when BetterUp Labs was founded in 2017, a portion of BetterUp Labs actually has more of a basic research mission, and do a lot of submitting and publishing in journals and things like that. But I think the trick is that it's such a lagging system. And there are like conflicts with sort of the, what's rewarded in business with proprietary, nature and all of this stuff. And so I see both as really necessary. Like, for example, one of the types of partnerships that are under my umbrella at BetterUp are coaching industry partnerships. And, when I have conversations with organizations like the International Coaching Federation or the Institute of Coaching about like where the, symbiotic value is, we have all of this data, right? And we're constantly mining it and doing research. And we have over 50 PhDs and, cross disciplines, whatever, at BetterUp who are equipped to do that research. And it's our research with our people, and we're a commercial entity. And so there's always going to be some natural and frankly warranted level of skepticism about the results, the processes, yada, yada, yada. And so it's really important that we work with others, either through partnerships, through peer-reviewed, processes, to have that external view and make sure that the public can trust the findings that we're getting from our research too.
I just really appreciate your perspective, because I imagine there's a lot of junior IS ecologists right now who are crying with joy to hear an executive talk about meta-analyses and K, and they can't believe it, because they hear that there's this science practice divide. And I think maybe you'll agree with this. It doesn't feel like there really is a divide. It feels like we're all working on problems and contributing different pieces to knowledge generation. Do you think that's fair?
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely how I view the world, as like both and. I see like the science practitioner continuum as a continuum. And what feels to me to be the core value at BetterUp for, like, again, I talked about all these different people. There's a diverse group. What we all share is the belief in the scientist practitioner model, where we as individuals orient along that continuum is different and can even change over time. We have, like, for example, when I started in labs, and now I'm in the go-to-market organization. That changes like the proportion of how I spend my time, but it doesn't change how I look at the world. Or, and at the end of the day, what brought me into the technology industry is, like, I think the stat is that on average, it takes 20 years to go from scientific insight to practical, like, or widespread application or use. At BetterUp, because we have that entire value chain in-house, we can do that in weeks. So, I mean, that's a really exciting opportunity, and it's not enough by itself, right? It doesn't scale. We need the full machinery of the academic process too.
So the speed of change in tech is a really interesting dimension of this. We've seen in the last months some pretty tremendous attention to rapidly changing technology. We talked about ChatGPT a little bit earlier as sort of bringing into public awareness just how advanced some of the language processing models have become, and bringing that to a really broad market, essentially. So I think it's surprised a lot of folks, especially those that haven't really followed how much language processing has been changing. So I'm wondering how you think that, we talked about it a little bit earlier, how you think that interacts with what the coaching industry is, maybe even what BetterUp's doing in particular. Is that, are we replacing coaches with language models? Are coaches going to be consulting language models on the slide before they talk to people they're coaching? Like, what is it going to look like, do you think?
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I don't have my crystal ball, but I will say it's a really exciting time, I think, to be designing what that future looks like, and trying to make sure that the right voices are in that conversation, to include coaches. But yeah, I mean, so, I mentioned earlier my personal belief. I think BetterUp's belief, if I can, cautiously speak on their behalf too, is that these models are incredible, and they're only going to get better. And so I think there's, it's hard for us to even like wrap our heads around like what's going to be possible in the future. And there's things that feel like they can't be replaced, or if they ever can be, it's going to be a ways out. And those are things like empathy, and there's human connection that we see as really a critical ingredient to especially transformative change, that I don't see being replaced by a bot. That said, I think there's tons it can do, and some of the most exciting applications that we see are actually in tools for coaches in making them more effective. So you can think about things like, there's a lot of cognitive load in coaching. You're trying to stay very present, often take notes, try to remember what happened in the last session, connect it to other things outside, diagnose like what's the issue at hand, what resources might be useful to this person, or framework or tools, or, we incorporate a lot of research on, given the outcome that someone's trying to drive, what are the key drivers in terms of predictors, mindsets, behaviors in our model, that I should be working with them or targeting on. So like all of that is a ton. So how do we help coaches do that, right? And stay present. So whether that's, AI assisted recommendation engines throughout the process, whether that's, hey, like I can have my client work with a chat bot prior to session to really get clear on what do they want to bring to session. I think things like that, or even between session, we might meet once a week, once every 2 weeks, like what's happening between, like how are we staying in touch? Is it always on me to remember like, hey, we talked about this thing, let me check in to see if they've done it. So I think it can enhance all of that. And then I also think one of the things that at BetterUp we care a lot about, and I personally care a lot about, is democratization of coaching and of science more generally, but like access to coaching. So where it started was it was for the elite, the C-suite, people who could afford the $5,000 an hour and all of that. And through the advances in coaching science, we now know it's like one of the most impactful interventions for development. And so, if we want to break down barriers to growth and access and all of that to leadership roles and everything else we're talking about, we've got to make it more publicly available. And today, if our goal is to have everybody in the world who wants it have access to a coach, every coach in the world would have to have something like 141,555 people on their roster. So that doesn't seem possible. Yeah, no biggie. Little emotional labor. But so we're going to have to use technology to help us get there. We're going to have to also increase coach supply, but we're going to have to use technology. And so you can imagine a world where certain types of problems, certain stages of life, like if I'm an individual contributor, first job ever, like do I need, David Peterson as my coach or Marshall Goldsmith? Probably not. So like and that's where the science comes in. Like how do we learn where the best places to use technology are, and like where a human really has to be in the loop?
Well, so you've I think you might have sparked the interest of some folks about what coaching actually involves then on the ground. I've heard sessions is one of the ways you describe having a session with a coach. I'm curious. I'm not totally sure what that even looked like with virtually. So kind of what I would wonder now is it possible maybe to close this up to give our viewers like a taste of authentic coaching? And maybe I'll leave it to you as to whether you want to coach us here or maybe grad students out there or watch
Coach
viewers.
Richard.
Me's fine.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
Richard.
Yeah.
Should we do a mock session, Richard?
Oh, okay.
Bring a real problem. What's important today?
I would like to get through this show successfully is my immediate problem.
Well, sorry, you said you want to get through the show successfully. What does success mean?
Oh God, what have I done? I would like our viewers to have a good time, feel like they've been informed, a little entertained, and demystify a little bit about IO and how it works in the world.
Yeah, how will you know?
I won't know.
Oh.
That's actually a great point.
Well, okay. Do you feel like you've achieved that success in the past?
Oh,
Good question.
Yeah, there are definitely episodes that we get feedback on. People will stop us at the conference or emails, or people we run into are like, "Oh, I saw that episode. That was great. I learned something, or it was funny, or whatever it might be." That's probably the best we've got so far.
And for those shows where you've gotten positive feedback, what do you notice about how you felt at the end of the show?
I think they were higher energy, I think. I feel like at the end of good shows, we could have kept talking for a long time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Not anxious for them to end.
So you want to get through the show, make sure it's successful. And you might know that by like getting to the end and feeling like you could keep talking for a while. How are you feeling right now?
This is pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I feel a little heightened right now from this live session, but otherwise
being
it's
on the
pretty
spot.
Good. Yeah.
I personally feel like this could go on for hours. This is great. I'm enjoying this very much.
All right, well then we'll call it a success.
Wonderful. Oh goodness. Oh, and echoed in our Discord too. Anytime Richard isn't comfortable is a good time. Thanks so much for that.
You're welcome. And now my personal metric of success has been achieved too.
Me too.
Oh my goodness. Okay. This has been great. I'm gonna go ahead and call it, though we could go for hours, I'm sure. I'm gonna call it here. Thanks so much for coming in. This has been great.
It was a lot of fun. Thank you both.
We're at the end now. Thank you all for joining us. This has been it for gig number 20. You can see how off I am from this coaching session that I just had. If you did enjoy yourself today, please be sure to subscribe, turn on notifications, join Discord, join our email list. All of that can be done at the website, thegig.online. Stay connected. We're happy to have you back. Thanks for watching, and we will see you next time for another great IO get-together. Bye.
Oh, the times were hard and the wages low. Leave her, Johnny, leave her. I guess it's time for us to go. And it's time for us to leave her. Leave her, Johnny, leave her. Oh, leave her, Johnny, leave her. For the voyage is done and the winds don't blow. And it's time for us to leave her.
That's it for another gig. To stay in touch, subscribe on YouTube, check out our website at thegig.online, join our LinkedIn group, sign up for our email notification list, and join our Discord. So many ways to connect. Thanks for joining us, and see you next time for another great IO get-together.